And everywhere the same debate starts.
Correct.
What's the best diet to follow?
No matter how much a community or a particular group of people have benefited from any particular diet, and they want to make it the diet of the entire world.
Quintessential debate, which is my grandmother ate this. Why are you telling me that now all of a sudden this ghee is unhealthy? My grandmother ate ghee, drank milk, did this for 90 years of her life.
But your take on the keto, carnivore, vegan diet?
I think keto is a great means to an end.
One of the MDs of a premium car. Okay. And he said that when he had gone on an intense keto for a long period of time, during board meetings, he would get these urges to kill the person.
Pramod, one of the most hotly debated topics. I've traveled to more than 20 cities this year, met hundreds of people, and everybody eats different food.
Yeah.
The native food composition across the country and Indians everywhere is just endemic to their city. And they have their favorite foods, and everywhere the same debate starts.
Correct.
What's the best diet to follow?
I know. And when we are trying to tackle this problem of diabesity for the Indian population in India and abroad, I think this is a very relevant starting point itself, because what I have realized, and you do hear me say to people, is no matter how much a community or a particular group of people have benefited from any particular diet, and they want to make it the diet of the entire world. Okay. Till date, no one community or a group of people who benefit from that diet have been able to make any diet universal. In fact, they've not been able to make any diet eternal also. So, and these two words struck me again a few years back only while conducting a program, that, and this is a fact, that different people benefit from different diets, and suddenly that diet becomes like the only and the best and everything. And
someone puts it in a bottle and decides to sell it. So,
and no matter how much they go about publicizing it, there will be takers for it and there will be non-takers for it. So till date, that's been, you can call it a problem or you can just call it a reality, that the situation, and let's face it, is that no diet has become universal.
It
which
can
means
be.
or can be. Or that everybody in the world has accepted one particular type of diet, or no diet can be eternal, which means the same person is following the same diet continuously, on and on and on, in different seasons or at different phases of his or her reversal journey, etc., etc. And I think whenever this is expressed, many people do feel, oh yeah, it does make sense, because within my own family at times, the younger generations again into a different kind of diet.
Multiculturalism.
Some of them are very conscientious. Many vegetarians going
you
to
see the youngsters.
Many vegetarians going to non-veg. Many youngsters going to
the gym-based diets.
Gym-based diets, or even very pure vegan kind of diets at times, and it's a topic of much understanding, I think, and we should have some.
And then you have the quintessential debate, which is my grandmother ate this.
Oh yeah.
And why are you telling me that now all of a sudden this ghee is unhealthy? My grandmother ate ghee, drank milk, did this for 90 years of her life, and she did no great physical activity. She didn't go to gym. So, then where does this whole argument come that suddenly that same food, try explaining to your grandmother about low carb or keto, she'll look at you like, oh, so I'm not going to eat rice from tomorrow? Curd rice is not good, vegan? Like, it's impossible to convince people. So, I mean, the way I have structured this puzzle, there are afflicted people in the world who have a certain medical condition that requires a therapeutic diet support.
Correct.
The diabetic population, obesity, lose weight, cholesterol, whatever. There is a normal population who's what we call normal weight, reasonably active, who need diets just for survival.
Correct.
No great physical activity, no athletic performance, no Ironmans, nothing like that. A moderate calorie requirement, who are looking for a sensible macronutrient ratio to just maintain their muscle, age well and so on, not have their immune system in place and so on. And then you have the third population who's doing the thrival existence, which is I want a six-pack, I want to run a marathon a week, I want to climb Kilimanjaro, I want to climb K2, which is fine. That is that. Or the Olympians.
Correct.
And you tend to I realize that, people go through phases of following, I'm scared, so I'm going to follow a diabetic diet. For now,
Yeah.
scared.
But like since we're talking of diabetes and obesity, and I think you do play around a lot with non-vegetarian food yourself, and I think you've been a part of different training programs also as a learner, as a teacher on vegan diets, and carnivore diets, and keto diets, and all kinds of.
Vegan also. There's egg, there's vegan, there's vegan, there's so many modifications where people do all sorts of things in the vegan system to just bring some protein in.
And in India, if you look at, it's very interesting. There was a graph floating around some time back in terms of the number of vegetarians, and interestingly, they are more in the northern belt, and the non-vegetarians increase on the coastal and the south belt. And let's say if you just want to, and they always want to hear that, this is also healthy, right?
Little more pious.
Yeah. But your take on the keto, carnivore, vegan diet, how would you kind of just want that to be understood by the diabetic and obesity population?
I think keto is a great means to an end. Like any healthy sort of short-term point A to point B diet, it really cuts down fat percent, it brings down the insulin, no doubt, it's awesome. But it has its counter effects, there is no free lunch in the diet world. Either you will compromise micronutrients or macronutrients, or you'll over binge on one particular micronutrient. And the keto world brings in the cholesterol, brings in the high fat. And unfortunately, they're treating all fats the same. Saturated fat is the same as unsaturated fat. You can eat whatever deep fried you want, you just call it keto, and you make up 2000 calories with almost 16 to 1800 from fat and protein. I don't know how resilient Indian body types, if you get the system used to it over a period of time. I understand you're a bodybuilder, 5, 7, 8 years, you've systematically gone from 50 grams of protein to now 250 grams of protein. Your system has got exposed to that, and you take the requisite amount of carbs that you need to absorb your micronutrients or whatever. So it's a slow and steady process. My problem is with the cold turkey from carbs, which Indians do, and then they suddenly start exercising like they've never before. Now the body has a double whammy. It has to fuel the exercise, plus you're undernourishing it from a carb perspective. Agreed, the purists from the keto industry will say we have 2 lakh calories stored in the body. There's enough fat there to fuel it. And you have 3 catabolic hormones, 1 anabolic hormone, just shut the insulin down and you'll go purely catabolic. Great theory. My problem is in all this, we see an average cholesterol of 300, don't we, from the guys who join?
Oh yeah. And I think medically also, from the conferences that I was in, certain places, even in Mumbai, it was alarming to see how, though they might look having a ripped body, okay, and 6 packs and all that, and we've had enough sudden drop deads in what do you say, fashion industry or film industry. And one of the linkages has been of the accumulation of cholesterol and cholesterol deposits inside the heart, okay, and there are some crazy stories you were mentioning about. Kezad, right?
Kezad was one of my, he still is one of my idols as a teacher, and the hardcore passion that he had for fitness. I really liked the way he was going about the whole industry. He raised the bar, but I think at some level that complete pivot from being a grain economy to being a meat-based economy. I think at a physical level, it may take a few generations before. I don't see us becoming a blue zone just on the back of suddenly starting to eat only meat. I don't see that being, and the primary purpose of a diet, I mean, what's it about finally? I mean, what are we trying to prove? Is it vanity? Is it to magically stay at 15% body fat for men and maybe 22-25 for women? What's the goal here? I think the premise of a diet should be to be able to comfortably nourish yourself, not be micronutrient deficient, yet fuel some exercise, and to do this without too much effort.
Correct.
You know, you eat your 2 rotis a day. Don't say, oh, gluten's bad all of a sudden. You've eaten gluten for 30 years of your life and now you call gluten the cause of everything. You know, I mean, like we said earlier, dosage is poison, right? I mean,
that's also there, and you know, human mind over a period of time where the judge is becoming stronger inside us, it kind of latches on to
a logic.
anything which is a single point theory. So it's not that gluten intolerance doesn't exist. It does exist.
Of course it does.
And it troubles a significant number of people also, like the way lactose intolerance troubles a certain number of people. But yeah, it's not everything, every time, everywhere, for everyone, you know, because we also see diabetics who are on wheat. Still reversing and doing well.
Absolutely fine.
And of course, there are others who don't also. So again, we come back to the non-universality.
Non-universality of
non-eternality.
I think that, like I said, if people choose any particular approach for a short term, I think it's very, very critical that they first get their labs done. And you should know you're starting with what level of cholesterol, what level of creat. Then you start a high protein diet and a high fat diet. I mean, just be careful with the keto in Indians. I'm not against it. It's a phenomenal, especially for the youth. It's magic. I've done keto for 3 or 4 years and I knew it was, hey, you look like $1 million every day. You can wear ripped t-shirts and roam around with your veins coming out everywhere. But at the end of the day, there is an undernourishment at one end and there is an overcompensation at the other. So one organ's paying the price for another. So
I think I didn't talk about one of the MDs of a premium car segment whom I had met in Bengaluru, and he said that when he had gone on an intense keto for a long period of time, during board meetings, he would get these urges to kill the person across. And that was an alarming bell, because then he said, oh, there's something going wrong, and he would get up and move around. And then he said, the thing that started hitting me the most is when I started getting suicidal thoughts. Imagine the managing director of a premium car company from Bangalore saying that. And yeah, besides the cholesterol in the blood, it's also about the brain hormones, you know, which do require the generation of, building blocks coming from carbohydrates at times. And he said just eating glucose immediately after that, it wasn't compensating it. It was not that immediately.
the metabolic flexibility is gone.
It took a little time for me to kind of settle down. So yes, maybe it's a short term.
Yeah, it's a great short-term thing, especially for the kids who really work out and, you know, no harm at all. You pre-shoots or whatever, you want to just suck the water out, get really ripped, it's fine. All that's cool. But long-term, I think it's always better to be metabolically flexible. I've gone to a South Indian joint, I should be able to eat a dosa. I go to a North Indian joint, I should be able to eat a paneer butter masala. I go to a Maharashtrian joint, sabudana khichdi is fine. I think you should be able to tolerate all kinds of food, and that metabolic tolerance is what you should have. You know, all in sensible dosages, of course. You can't just binge everywhere. But coming back to the second type of diet, you know, which is nowadays becoming quite common, is the vegan movement. And you've been vegan for quite a while now. I think, you know, and again, coming from being a pure vegetarian to then transitioning to even removing that food group. How have you compensated the calorie loss? I mean, not that dairy gives us a lot of calories, but it does give us a certain, and then there's the whole calcium and minerals and blah blah which people bring up. But I think that the vegan lobby has managed to create enough awareness. But where do you think the vegan thing has a place in this dietary ecosystem?
Look, when it comes to diabetics and obese people, a vegan diet has a very strong place in the ecosystem, because it's going to kind of immediately drop down the calories, overall, and it's going to shoot up the alkalinity in the system, which is otherwise not paid attention to so much in other diets. You know, you're the acid alkaline balance, restoration, definitely it makes sense. And I think there's enough evidence whereby, you know, people lose weight and medicines start coming down, and it's also healing for the digestive system, antioxidants, enzymes, all of that. But again, it's tricky because we have met vegans who are diabetics. We have met vegans who are obese. Okay. Some of them I found have overdone just the number of calories as such, because fried food, let's say samosa is also vegan, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or sometimes I've seen a few fanatics going over on the overdose of soya.
Yeah.
For that matter.
Yeah.
And again, I feel I usually don't get into too much of food groups, but soya as a food group, at times at a larger level, the allergic potential that it has, an inflammatory nature, maybe it's kind of not worked well with certain populations. So personally, if you ask me, yes, I prefer being a vegan. It definitely helps. And there was a phase where I was like fanatically vegan, but then laddus come, and then, you know, what
about ice cream, man? Where does a person go without ice cream and chocolate? I mean,
so by the way, you'll be shocked, Malhar, by the kind of quality and availability of vegan ice creams in India and abroad also now.
Yeah, but now I'm going to be a purist here. I mean, ice cream is ice cream. I mean, now you're playing with the stuff which comes from, you know, it's like saying I've made Maggie without maida or something. You know, I've gone and made it, but it'll be like, really?
Coconut milk, almond milk is
Yeah, I know.
crazy,
See, again, after 40, I
tasty
can
रहता है.
rationalize these things, but coming down, you know, from a sheer taste to taste, apple to apple comparison, it's tricky.
It is tricky for many, but many have cracked the code.
Agree,
And it's
agree.
like crazy tasty also and stuff like that. So yeah, there are a lot of merits, but again there are warning signs, you know, because there are some people who are, let's say, not able to gain weight for that matter, okay, and they are not deriving enough calories, because like there are certain categories again in that will not eat anything, let's say till whatever lunch, or at times they will just have a lot of fruits. That is one crazy
new thing now,
for diabetes and obese people. Lot of fruits.
Yeah.
Lot of fruits. You know, fruits is natural, and anything natural is good.
Yeah, and you get your sweet kick also from there.
And you can have a kg of mangoes and a dozen of bananas, and we had to shoot that video down, you know, which was playing a lot of ruckus on social media. So yeah, again, I have found that fanaticism on any one path does bring out a feedback from the body, and the body itself teaches you that maybe something is not going in balance. Like there have been certain vegans and just fruitarians, and you know, all of them who went through crisis and death also. I mean, recently there was something. So again, there's an element of understanding the merit of that particular path, and the fanaticness at times, you know, derailing the overall journey, and arriving at what suits your body, because there are different body types I find who thrive on different types of diets also. So we just need to develop a little bit of respect for all dietary forms. Yeah.
I think overall the knowledge, the knowledge density that people have when it comes to food is very insufficient. Even most of us are guilty of it. You know, we were not in charge of making our food, so we don't really know to a large extent what it contains, what it is. And only when you get hit by an affliction, then you suddenly go full kitchen sink at it. But I think from a maturity perspective, you have to learn to fuel activity.
Correct.
Because a baseline diet, and there are many lovely videos on this where you will remain in an orbit of 10 to 15 standard foods which you will go to every week. That's your staple diet. It's your native food that you have grown up eating. The question is now, when you put an additional demand of exercise, or you create an affliction which takes away one of those food groups. Now what happens? Now diabetes is a carbohydrate restricting diet. It doesn't allow you to eat 5 times your body weight. You have to come down to 3 or 4 times your body weight. Correct. Okay, now where's the remaining 400 calories going to come from? Now you have to up the protein. Okay, great. I up the protein. How? I'm a vegetarian. Now what do I do? Okay, you do these 3-4 things. Now I've chosen to be morally, ethically vegan. Okay, now even paneer is gone. Now where do I get my protein? So this evolution, I think you need to be in touch with your medical needs.
Correct.
Put them number one, then get your calorie requirements in place,
Yeah.
and then bring in the ethical, moral jargon. If you start with this, then it's like playing chess with your hands tied behind your back and say, I'm going to win this without my hands. It's difficult to construct. It becomes a huge effort, and that is why I find adherence starts falling.
And what we miss out is there are so many dietitians and there are so many diet talks that happen. People come, listen. Whom are you going to go back to? In terms of whom are you going to eat with?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's going to be your parents, your spouse, your kids, and the younger generation with their peers. So, the social structure that consciously, unconsciously you created around you, I think is the biggest influencer.
Correct.
And, for every pattern of diet, you will have their, whatever say, evangelists at time, or
very passionate speaker, salesman of that.
they will kind of, they say that, what was that saying? Very powerful saying. The mind is so intelligent that it can find data always in the universe to prove its theory.
Yeah, the thinker thinks, the Google proves. Yeah, you just go search what you want and you get the theories. And is carbs bad for health? Okay, 5 research papers on why carbs are bad for health. It doesn't end. But coming back to the third fad now, which we've seen keto, we've seen veganism, we've seen there's a bit of quantitative nutrition. People start eating smaller portion sizes, but the whole concept of intermittent fasting now is capturing the fancy of the whole nation practically. Whoever you meet, I'm not in my eating window, 16:8 and 14:10 and so on. I mean, how have you played with that?
I've played a lot with that, and the play has, I think by far, we have one of the most powerful intermittent fasting protocols, and water fasting, juice feasting, SNS fasting, all of that kind of stuff is there. What I've always been fascinated in that puzzle or that piece is, I think it came as an insight while I was playing around with fasting with my own body. Diwali time had come, and I'd eaten a lot of kaju-based sweets, and then thoda sa tummy which keeps going in and out, thoda kuch fast karte hain. The fascinating thing was when the fasts are done, and many people have done fasts and they have found certain aha moments out of those fasts, is that I think a very different set of biochemistry gets activated inside the system once you start fasting. Very different set of biochemistry. So, those ketone bodies coming and that brain and body going into a zone where you feel like almost it's akin to having a nasha types, And then you go on a fast. I did 7 days, couple of times, and the first meal that you have after that, the taste and the richness which you experience and the surge of different chemicals that happen inside your system, and then you start appreciating why food is so addictive, why eating is so addictive, because it's like very sensory, very sensory kind of a thing. And during that time I was also kind of connecting with the theory that maybe we were designed for fasting and feasting, and appreciating both the sides of the coin the way we appreciate day and night. Because when we go to sleep, when we are
both
at
have its
night,
value.
we benefit from that, the night, and when we are in the day and active with our eyes open, we have a different world. I mean, the dream world is different and the eyes open world is different. Similarly, I find the fasting world is very unique and different from a biochemistry, brain chemicals, everything perspective. And eating world is very different, and both have their own merits. And since we are talking of diabetes, which is already overstuffing of at times fat and sugar and obesity, I think fasting is one of the major strategies to understand, one of the major strategies to learn, adapt, adopt, and grow in. You know, because it's going to benefit the system. It is benefiting the system because, you know, you are dumping or burning basically what? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, right? Whether it's carbohydrate or fat, they are just carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. And the moment you're going low on that, you're burning them into carbon dioxide and water. You're going to benefit from that. Your body is going to feel lighter and eased out. Now, the tricky part I've noticed is, again, I don't know, it's a human thing. The human thing of generalization. The moment you benefit in a particular way, in a particular format for a certain time, suddenly that truth becomes the whole truth. It's like one of the examples was that, okay, you know how to open the knob, you do this, right? So even if it's dark, the moment you hit a doorknob, you're going to do this. So, okay, if I benefit from 16/8, or I benefit from, let's say, 2 meal, or I benefit from any kind of so-called fasting kind of diets, suddenly the mind evaluates, and it's not wrong. It's just that it gets located and says, okay, this is it.
I found for the rest of my life, I'm going to do this.
Or kuch nahi hai. And I've seen
you've seen the negative side of that.
I've seen the negative side of fasting also. Like, ऐसा लगता है कि यार इसको एक बॉक्स मारूंगा ना तो मर जाएगा यार.
The system becomes undernourished and fragile again.
Seriously, there's so
bone health and everything because it's all about the brain. It's another addiction, no? At the end of the day, it's gone into the whole morphine, heroin kind of, like, you know, you just don't want to eat now. You want to be in that blissful state forever. And I think at some we see skeletons, right? People in attempt to keep the sugars low. So on an average, I have seen diabetics who do their quantitative counting. They eat on an average about 500 to 800 calories less than what they need, which is why they keep losing drastic amounts of weight. And then they try this 16/8 thing, and they assume that just by fasting I'm going to knock off only fat. The body doesn't work that way. You knock off muscle bulk also, and then you come back to square one. Now you can't handle the sugars because there's no muscle to burn it with. So I think, you know, it's the travesty is in constantly looking, like you said, for one universal fix, you know, that one thing. But I think we've covered the 4. To me, fasting doesn't suit me for a logical reason that being an athlete, 3,500 is my metabolic rate. And when I work out, I need another 1,000. So at 4,500, if I start opening up windows when I can eat, I'll be only eating in those windows. 8, 9 hours of eating of 3,000 calories is a lot of load.
Yeah, but you're not a diabetic. You're not an obese person. So fasting as a strategy for you is not relevant. And you're in continuous dynamic catabolism and anabolism.
Correct.
Means
with
you are
more
working
catabolism
out.
Than anabolism.
You're breaking down yourself so much through the intense workouts that you need food for the anabolism, you know. So it's not relevant, and that's the mistake at times people do, you know, who are already thin, they are fasting, or those who are already working out a lot, they are trying to fast. Again,
like the famous dictum is muscles have to be fed, fat has to be starved.
Correct.
I mean, given that logic, how do you balance both? How do you feed the muscle, starve the fat at the same time? The body's built it. You eat 12 hours, you fast 12 hours. It's built in. The 1:1 is the simplest thing. Problem is you start having late dinners and then even later breakfast. I mean, it's such a vicious cycle. I'll wake up late, I'll sleep late. You know, all this has to be finally brought down to a least common sustainable, you know, 6 out of 7 days. You know, I work out 5 out of 7 days, I eat clean 6 out of 7 days. One day you have it, man.
Correct.
You know, but the problem is, I think, you know, there's a more of an attachment mentally to a diet. You know, because it's now, you need to be seen or other heard that you're on something. You go to a party, say, what are you on? I'm on 16/8, I'm on vegan. What are you currently?
Yeah,
you know,
it becomes an identity.
It's an identity
also.
thing now. You know, and people are very attached to it. Like, I'm not against it, but I think people should rationalize it a little bit and realize that there's no nirvana at any end of those things. finally you will go back to the grandmother. If your grandmother was living with you and she'd look at you and look at your plate and say, what the hell's going on here? You know, why isn't there standard fare?
I'll tell you, the grandmother funda also at times again gets distorted.
Yeah.
Like it's like, you know, local food, or you know, local of course
Yeah.
is great, but traditional food, many of them are amazing.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. Okay, but at times I've seen distortions around
It
that
becomes richer. Yeah.
at two, because look, a generation is around 30-35 years.
Yeah.
So if we just look at a grandmother only, okay, 60-70 years back,
Yeah.
how many children did she bear?
Oh yeah. Me double
Minimum
digit maybe.
4?
Yeah, minimum 4. Yeah.
Minimum 4, okay, and many were like 5, 6, 7,
Yeah,
8, 9 also. Now, what did that do to her hormonally? You know, how active was her sexual life?
Yeah.
How active was her hormonal life? Okay, it's different. Minimum 4 to hota hi tha.
Not to mention running behind so many. So the physical activity is also insane.
How many maids did she have at home?
Maybe one if she was lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. How many maids did she have? And the sheer amount of just simple steps. Now we have started doing
Yeah, yeah.
10,000 all that.
20,000 by the.
Simple steps, simple lifting of weights
Yeah.
and moving weights.
Yeah.
Okay. Simple drawing of water and, you know, carrying
the
water
entire, yeah,
and the
existential.
clothes. There was so much more physical aggression inside that generation. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of activity, not just caloric burning.
Yeah, yeah.
Caloric burning is one part of the system.
Yeah.
But the generation of 70 different signal molecules.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's a different topic in itself, behavior therapy. That was so different. So her food was absolutely, I mean, pretty much aligned to her needs, and she could do very well with that, with good achars and good probiotics and
Yeah. They
good
created
curds
taste
and-
without volume.
Yeah.
We create taste only with volume, and you know it's got to be, ice cream has to be
And
thick, yeah.
and home stuff.
Yeah, and home stuff.
Home stuff. Home
Yeah,
cooked.
the economics, and there was no mass production of certain, or they weren't available nearby. So
Correct.
it was always, you know.
So they could handle a lot more. I feel they could handle a lot more variety.
Yeah.
Be it veg or non-veg or dairy or vegan or
Yeah.
non-vegan. Grandmothers at that time could handle much more variety than what the current generation can
correct.
handle. Okay, current generation has to become a little bit more cautious of their body, mind state, whether they need to lose weight, bring
Yeah.
down the sugars, accordingly cut things down. Do definitely, you know, give priority to those kind of strategies which will help
Yeah.
them, and yeah, then not get stuck in one.
Yeah, I
and
know. Get
play
stuck
around
for a
with
short
it.
time. Just don't try and, you know, don't call it like now this is it. You know, I think for me, I have always seen that when I leave my native food, like now being Maharashtrian, you give me sabudana khichdi, I know exactly how much to eat.
Correct.
You give me bhel, there'll be the right amount of spice in it, the right amount of lemon, right amount of salt. I'm done in that serving. That $30 gives me more satiety than a 400 rupee burger.
Oh,
Because it just is that way. We are natively tuned to how much and what density of calories we need. But the minute you depart from your native food, you're now gone to a Chinese restaurant. You're staring at that menu. Intuitively, you don't know what to order. So you start following taste. The first thing, okay, get me Manchurian, get me rice. You've had that. Now it's little spicy, the Ajinomotos, they have triggered different responses in your brain.
Yeah, but sushis are amazing, man.
Sushis are this much, man.
and the wasabi with it hits the nose and the head.
But they are not volume. The problem is we have got used to volume, 1000 calories, 800
Yeah,
calories.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Those
not
are
a
the
meal.
killer.
It's not value for money. You know,
That's true.
people have want. That's a starter in today's world. And you know, you see Netflix series. My wife always jokes, "Do these people never eat?" Because you see any Netflix serial, they are all perfect BMI. You'll never see them eating. If at all, they're eating with 1-2 chopsticks and they're just picking up one noodle and that's it. That's food. They're never drinking black coffee all day. And she's like, which world lives like this? And then whereas for us, food is an event.
Oh my God.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner is an event. Come to the table. There's 4 different dishes. And like I was telling you earlier, you know, that there's been a cultural shift in the last 10 years or in India. we have found that when we go to a restaurant, we no longer order communal food.
Yes, I think that's a very important topic.
It's because the American chains have taught you this. You cannot order American food in a community spread. It has to be individual. So it'll be, what will you have, Pramod? Pramod says, I'll have this starter with this main course with this dessert. He's ordered his own, and each of them are already oversized.
Right.
Because it was technically built for 2 or strategically built for 1.5, which just falls short for 2. So they have to order again. So 2 people ordering for 3, and this system which has got set that every 9 or 10-year-old child in a restaurant is being asked, beta, what will you have? And that child says, I'll have chicken lollipop for starters, which is 8 pieces. Then I'll have a sizzler, and then I'll have a dessert. Now that child is 30 kgs of weight. The calorie intake capacity of 600-700 a day. You're going to feed that child 800 in a meal.
Right.
The problem is not that one-time thing. The problem is this stepping stone now. Now that's become the new normal. When he goes out again, wants 800 again. And slowly he brings that volume home. Mom, I can't eat 1 Maggie, I need 2. That bliss point, as it's called in the theory of satiety. How much of a particular food do you need to get the whack? Now the whack comes in native food from taste, but non-native from volume. And that's insane. I think the first step, today we must give them some take-homes to start with. So for me, the take-home has to be systematically tapering the dose of any food that you have got used to in a larger proportion.
Right.
If you need 200 ml of cappuccino just to satiate your coffee needs, you need to start making that 50% milk, 50% water. Then 25% milk, 75% water. So you get the coffee, you don't need the milk.
Correct.
Similarly, you start tapering. You go out for Chinese restaurant, you order smaller portions.
Correct.
So I think this portion size control is first because we need the taste. Let's not pretend that we live in utopia. Now, what would you say from a medical perspective? There's an affliction in the system. How should a person just start with, at a family level, pulling back?
I think some balance of vegan diet and fasting for diabetics and obese is a very important starting point. But again, because diabetics at times come with kidney issues, uric acid, thyroid, they have to cater it. And I think it's better when the afflictions are hitting you that you do go to experts and be in touch with them to get proper direction, because if you could have done it yourself,
You have done it.
you could have done it by now, right?
Or Googled it.
Yeah. So I think that makes sense, but broad directions are these. Keto again is going to be a very, very short-term strategy in case really needed. Otherwise, you have to be very careful of that. And yes, remembering that nothing has become universal or eternal. Okay, if there was one such thing, it would have been by now. Keeping that in mind, playing around, seeing what suits you, sugars, weight, results, and what is convenient with the family and wherever you're moving around. Travel at times, disturbs things. So how do you become wiser about, eating the right things when you're traveling and all that? So it's again complex that way. But yeah, these are could be some food for thought for those who are watching.
Absolutely. I think for me, just people have to just start treating it like you treat financial planning. You identify your future needs first and then work backwards. There will be limitations in the system. You won't be able to earn beyond a certain level, but you have to learn to do what you can and ensure that your future is reasonably secure, because I think that they go together. There's no point having money with no health, and at the end of the day, both have to go together. So I think this treating it with the same amount of respect, is very necessary. So we hope you take home something in this session, and I think in the next few sessions we'll go a little more into details. We have so far not really stepped too much. We're trying to avoid that, but let's hope we can keep you hooked in the next few sessions.
See you again.